Want to know what the movers and shakers of New Hampshire's performing arts are thinking? Welcome to New Hampshire Unscripted with your host, Ray Dudley.
This is Ray Dudley, Artistic Director for Square Peg Productions. And in this episode of our This Coronavirus is Gonna Be the Death of Me series, we sit down, albeit remotely, with a good friend of mine, Aaron Compagna, and we just shoot the breeze about things that are important to him, like his acting career, his film. He loves to do the 48-hour film festival, Improv. He is part of the Queen City Improv group. And lastly, what is he doing to while away the hours while he's sitting in quarantine? I think you'll like it. Take a listen. How you doing?
Doing okay. How are you?
That's a very cinematographic look now. Thanks for changing that.
Right.
You need the black bars, top and bottom, to really enhance it.
Right. How are you doing? This is really this is kind of a cool surprise. It's nice to just get an interview like during this whole thing.
No, we're doing really good. I've been wanting to talk to you for a real long time. Anyhow, I'm just going through my list.
No, I'm glad to be on the list.
Yeah, no, you're way up there.
Maybe like
It's a list. So, how you doing?
Okay, considering the circumstances.
Yeah.
I am on medical leave from my job for a couple weeks, but it's more of a preventative thing because I have a heart disease. So if I catch this thing, it could be a lot worse for me than the average person. So I'm taking some extra precautions and so they're allowing me to use medical leave as a precautionary measure during this time.
So do you have any contact with anyone? Do you go out at all?
Oh yeah. Well, no, I don't go out except maybe to get food. I do a lot of Zoom stuff, like Zoom meetings and talking to people, texting, playing games with them on the phone. Yeah.
This really tests the human spirit here.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what to do.
I've always been more of a stay-at-home kind of person anyway, so I think other people are having a harder time with it than I am. I think I'm kind of more accustomed to just staying at home and wasting time.
So besides, say, going on a vodka bender, what have you been doing inside your
vodka
house?
Bender? Well, I can't drink, unfortunately. No, that's it. I mean, I've just been reading or watching movies or just talking to people on Zoom or just playing on the phone, and that's pretty much it. And then cleaning when I need to.
How's that going? You got to bring in a bulldozer, or you?
Well, fortunately, my roommate is a professional. She used to be a professional house cleaner, so she insists on cleaning pretty much everything except my room, and that's it. So it's nice to have someone who insists on cleaning. I certainly don't argue with that.
Yeah, you lucked out there.
Yeah.
Were you doing anything prior to the outbreak? Were you doing something at the Hatbox?
We were rehearsing for the Hatbox performance of 39 Steps.
Oh, yeah.
It was, we was going to go up on the last weekend of March and then the first 2 weekends of April. And we were going to have 2 weeks of tech in the Hatbox Theater because it's a very tech-heavy show, lots of audio cues, lots of rapid costume changes, like on the spot. So we were going to have 2 full weeks of tech week at the Hatbox, and it was right in the middle of Andrew trying to make a decision about whether to keep it open, and then as things progressed, it became more and more apparent that you wouldn't be able to have the Hatbox open during this time. So it went from let's not use as many props to let's not go to rehearsal unless nobody in the cast is coughing or anything like that, to okay, we can't do the show. I don't know the details because I was not behind the scenes in terms of like what the Hatbox is doing and everything. But that's from my end. That's what I got. So yeah, it was just right in the middle of that run, or that right at the exact time we were supposed to do that run is when the shutdown really happened.
I know Carrie L was in it. Who else was in that show?
Carrie L and Chris Savage. I know
just
Chris
the three of you?
I know Chris Courage. I don't know if you know who Chris Courage is.
I know the name, but I don't know.
He's another theater person, and I keep mixing their names up. So sometimes it takes a while. And Scott Severance, who was also producing it.
Yeah.
And it was gonna be the 4 of us.
Who directed it?
Greg Parker.
So have you guys been talking to Andrew about maybe when the Hatbox reopens, you might be the first show, or?
From what I understand, we're not going up at this time. It's possible that if Scott wants to do it, there's been talk about maybe doing it next year or pitching it for next year or something like that. But as of now, what we are going to do with this cast at this time is not happening. And I think they're now just talking about, well, it's still an ongoing. We don't know. Like May 4th is the current date where everything's going to get, people are going to start being able to go out again, but we don't know, if it's going to stay that way. So there's already been talk of changes of shortening the weekends for the other shows. So I'm also involved in the show that Brian's directing for Concord Players, but that they're performing at the Hatbox.
Which was that?
The dinner party. Sorry.
With your memory, you'll be good at theater.
I know. Seriously. It's so weird. I memorize lines, but I can't. Yeah, I have issues. I blame everything on the stroke that I had in 2014.
Good cover.
It's very convenient. Anyway, the dinner party was going to be 3 weekends, but now it's 2 weekends.
When was that going up?
That is supposed to go up at the end of May, the final weekend of May.
Oof. Have you guys dipped your toe in at all on that one? Are you doing Zoom?
Yeah, we had a read. We had a read through, but I didn't go. But yeah, I had, the last time I was involved was at the audition. So that was the last time that I saw everyone. But they had a read through. I heard it went really well. We are encouraged, Brian's encouraging us to get together with our scene part, with our each character, male character and female character are paired in the show, to get together with our partner, and work on scenes and scene analysis and all that stuff where you think about characters, backgrounds, and history and blah blah blah. And we're going to have a virtual rehearsal next week, which is going to be through Zoom, and I think it's going to be, I don't know exactly how it's going to work yet, but I think it's probably going to be a lot of talking about character, and I don't know, whatever we can do. I know that the production that Gary was working on, it has been having remote rehearsals that he's doing for the Hatbox. So I'll have to ask some friends who are involved in that what that's like, but I guess I'll find out next week.
Yeah. So you are one of the busier people that I know. I mean, you and Carrie L seem to just be always doing something. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of downtime. You and I first met, I think, in Of Mice and Men at the Winnie.
Yep.
And I knew nothing about you prior to that. So if you wouldn't mind, what's your theater background? Where's all your love for this come from?
Yeah, I have no idea where it comes from.
Okay.
I've always really was fascinated by by acting, by performing in front of people as far as I can remember. My mother was really heavily into finding things where I could audition or I could perform in. I remember when I was 10 years old, she read in the newspaper that the Palace Theater was having acting classes for kids, and it was being run by a couple of the people that did a lot of Palace Theater shows at the time. And she brought, I think it was like 4 Saturdays for a month or something. And it was she'd bring me on a Saturday afternoon, and we'd do all these acting exercises and games, and it was really fun. And then from there, I just had connections. There was a cable TV reporter that was creating his own TV movie, like a half-hour TV movie, and he held auditions at the acting class for the TV movie, and I ended up getting one of the lead roles. So from that class, I went into that movie, and then one of the teachers in that class cast me in a play, just a very small play for Peacock, very small role in one of the Peacock plays, and Princess and the Pea, and I was the court jester. And then from there, I met all these other people, and it's really just connections. Like, you meet people, and then they know you, and then they keep you in mind, and then they call you and say, hey, we're going to have auditions for this, or I could see you doing this part. And so it just kind of snowballed from from that point on. And my mother always stayed, when I was a kid, my mother always stayed focused on what auditions were happening in the area for kids. She would look, in the newspaper and Union Leader, and she'd read stuff like that. And she said, "Hey, they're going to audition for this. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so from there, I just kept doing shows and decided I wanted to be an actor at some point. I don't even know. I don't even know what point I ever decided that. I just said, "This is great." And I used to love watching TV, and I used to like watching, sitcoms, Three's Company and Faulty Towers and all those shows where
Great
everyone
shows.
looked like they were having a really good time. So I was like, wow, people get paid to do that. Like I was amazed that it was like something that people got paid to do. And I'm still amazed. Like when we do the improv shows or whatever, to me it feels like fun. It feels like recess, I'm not getting paid for that, but people will pay to see that. And that always fascinates. It's like, what's the catch? I always wondered that. What's the catch? I still don't know what the catch is.
Are you predominantly community theater as far as theater goes, or?
Yeah, I'm predominantly community theater as far as theater. I just went to the New Hampshire professional auditions like a
Is
few
that the
weeks ago.
NETCs?
Yeah,
How'd you like that?
it was interesting. I was probably the only person over 20 there, which is kind of cool
It's very
because
good, actually, right?
yeah. But I think I had misread the time. I was supposed to present two monologues, a comedic and a dramatic, and I think I misread how long I had, and I thought I had a little bit longer. And so a few minutes before I went up, I realized, oh, I only have 90 minutes to do these. So I kind of rushed them a little bit. It might have affected the performance. I don't know. I got called back for the professional company that does Shakespeare.
Yep.
They just do all advice to the players, but
Yeah.
I had missed the callback time. Like I had misunderstood the callback time, so I got there.
All right,
I got there a little too late.
Hold on here. So you misread the time that you had. You missed the
I
callback.
misunderstood. The lady told me what time. The lady told me. I thought she was telling me what time to be back for. She was telling me what time it was over. So I didn't end up going to those callbacks, but it's all right. I'm not the biggest Shakespeare guy. I like doing Shakespeare, but I'm not the biggest Shakespeare actor.
Yeah, I used to love Shakespeare a lot.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. It's okay. It's all right.
All right.
So yeah, I had been advised to go to the NETCs, but I hate auditions. I really can't stand them.
I don't.
They almost
Does
make
anybody
me vomit.
like auditions? Does anybody
Some
like
people,
auditions?
if you put
I don't
out
even
a
think
poll,
the people auditioning are like them. I don't like auditioning people, and I don't like being auditioned. I don't know if anybody likes them.
yeah, I know. It's probably cost me roles, but I guess I'd rather not work than go through that pain.
Yeah, community theater is, well, it's easier to get roles, but community theater there's something endearing about it that it's hard to let go of. And it's more like it's just more like the idea of like being this like group of friends and group of like this family that does shows together, that sort of community feel.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's so prevalent in professional theater.
It's kind of like their softball night out, right?
Yeah.
It's like their bingo night or
Right,
whatever,
right.
Yeah, and you get the same group of people, hopefully, or whatever, or you
Yeah.
rotate them through. And so was it crowded at the NETC?
It was full of kids.
Man.
I saw a few adults. I was like, oh, good, someone my age, but they were the parents of the kids that were auditioning.
Of course. You do theater, you do improv, and you do film.
Yeah.
So let's kind of maybe go through those three. So sticking with theater for a second, do you direct too? Have you directed?
No. Well, I don't direct theater. I don't know. I just never I love to direct film. I love to like think of the storytelling in terms of the shots and how they go together. But there's nothing about directing theater directing that really intrigues me or like makes me want to get up and do it.
I know the feeling. I have no desire to ever do it. Ever.
I'm very thankful for people that's their passion,
Yeah, me
because
too.
I don't know. I mean, I've never really tried my hand at it. I did direct a couple of 6-minute student plays for a college a couple of years ago, which was cool. But it was all like student actors and plays that students wrote, and it was kind of fun, like trying to place everyone. but it's not I don't have any drive to just direct a community show or.
Me either. So you do a lot of work with Mr. Gaskell. Is that correct?
Well, I have been the last couple of years. So the thing about the Hatbox Theater is that when it opened up, it brought together, I think, some of the Players Ring community closer to this area, because the theaters are very similar. The Hatbox is kind of almost modeled after the Players Ring a little bit, where, you know, it's that intimate 3/4 thrust stage, or you can make it into whatever configuration you want. They had, I think they had one show where it was like the audience was all around, or I might be thinking of Theater Kapow. So that's the other one. That's the other company that does very close-up intimate theater, which
Yes,
I used to do a lot of stuff with them for a few years. I really like that, and it's kind of like bringing New York back. It's kind of like bringing New York to New Hampshire. There's a lot of that in New York, just like black box theater. You just very, very close to the audience, and you can see the faces of the actors really close up. So, what was your question again?
The fact that you're working with
Gaskell. So so I know Gaskell did a lot. So Gaskell did a lot of stuff in the East Coast with the Players Ring and Seacoast Rep, and I know I met Kelsey Domine. You know Kelsey because we did Nanny Kim's dinner with her, and I met her when we were rehearsing for a Majestic show, Clue, and I ended up becoming sick. I had sort of like not like a mini stroke, like a sort of a reemergence of some stroke symptoms during that show, where like I started having issues. Anyway, I had some physical issues, and she waited outside with me to make sure that someone came to pick me up. And so that moment stayed with me. And she's a great actress, fantastic director, but that moment really stayed with me. That she was and she was her spirit was just so positive and so, and it was kind of I felt horrible that I was like, I was screwing up everything because I couldn't do the show. It was like a week before the show went, and I couldn't do the show, and I was screwing it all up, and I felt so guilty. And she was just very in high spirits, and I really appreciated that. So anyway, I got to know her, and she knew Greg Gaskell. So she had done A Christmas Carol. She directed. No, she was in A Christmas Carol with Greg. They had met, and then I guess she invited him to see some shows that she was directing, and then they formed a relationship. And so I knew her, and then she invited me and a few other local actors to go to a reading for a play called 8x8, which was 8 short plays.
Great show. It was great.
Yeah, and it was the funniest thing I had ever read. And I was determined to audition for that, to clear my schedule, whatever was on my schedule, find out the moment I found out when the auditions were, and do the best audition I could for that, and just find out all the information I could, because I really, really wanted to do that show. And so by doing that show, I got to know him very well. Everybody knows he's really talented, but he's also one of the most gregarious, just outgoing people, genuinely nice, kind, and wanting to, he's much more wanting to hang out than I ever as a person than I ever am. So I appreciate that, because sometimes I just need a little nudging. So we got to know each other, and we worked really well on 8x8. So, he had me in mind for Background Check, and he had done Background Check, the play, twice before, and each time he did it, he rewrote it. And then he wrote a character with me in mind, which is the first time anyone's written a character with me in mind. Well, no, there was one time in college, but that was for a scene for class.
Porn doesn't count.
Oh, well, never mind then. This is the first time then. And I was like, whoa. So that's how we got to know each other. And I credit the Hatbox for a lot of this, because it's basically, it brought in a lot of people from the Seacoast who used to doing stuff at the Rep and at the Players Ring.
8x8 was hysterical.
It was one of the funniest shows I've ever done.
It's one of the funniest I've seen in a long time.
Even the script, I couldn't stop laughing at the script. I was in tears.
Each of those vignettes, and I'm glad they were vignettes, because they interspersed throughout that whole play, just cracked me up. And it was well cast. He has a good eye for talent.
Oh, and that's where I met Carrie L. Well, I mean, the first time I saw Carrie L, she was popping out of a cake in Barnum, and I remember like I took note of that. But that's the first time we actually met was at the reading. And a lot of people I met for the first time. Chris Savage, I just started because I started going to the Players Ring plays more, but Chris was doing a lot of shows at the Hatbox at that time. So and I knew Grady from doing Christmas Carol at the Players Ring, and I didn't realize they were married. I was enjoying each of them separately. I was enjoying Grady's like company and enjoying his shows separately. And then I'm like, oh, you're married. Oh, wow. Small world.
Yeah.
So that was a whole new kind of world that opened up for me with the handball.
So you have a really great sense of humor. Where does that come from? Is that a family thing? Or are you
I think
just
so.
Yeah.
My mother's father was hilarious. He was the funniest guy I knew. My maternal grandfather. I passed a couple of years ago. He would come out with jokes, like really, really funny jokes that no one's ever heard of before. That it just almost seemed like it was spontaneous to him. And you ask anyone in my family, they'll tell you it was so. Whatever sense of humor I had. My dad's side of the family was pretty funny too. My dad was hilarious. My dad could really be. So I don't know. Hopefully, I kind of think of them as their spirits now. It's just sort of like nudging me every once in a while.
So do you do any writing?
I did like playwriting or just writing in general.
Well, just in general. Porn doesn't count.
Those
Then no.
Really.
Just I don't know. Play. I know. You do your own film stuff, but
yeah, screenplays. I did participate in the play in the day festival that the Hatbox did, that Greg Parker put on as a playwright, just to see if I could do that. And I found almost much easier than writing screenplays.
Really?
Yes, because I wasn't worried about what things looked like so much. Like I wasn't worried about how to convey an idea with images. I was just like stream of consciousness writing dialogue without thinking about it or judging it or anything, just kind of writing it and then looking back and saying, okay, so where's the story here?
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of seeing where it went. And it felt a lot more organic to me than writing screenplays. So I might have another go at that at some point.
Was it? I've written. Doesn't make any difference what I've done. How do you feel about? How do you feel about seeing something that you've written on stage? Was it interesting to see it go from the page to now hearing it and seeing it?
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool. It was so. I don't even know the word. It felt it was to write something and then to see it brought to life by people who are so into it and so sincere about it. It's kind of like, it's just, I don't even know the word to describe it. It's so cool. It's so like, I felt loved in a way.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who like has never felt love in his life, but like it's just kind of like, I felt like it was like your imagination just coming to life. It was awesome.
Yeah, it must be because it's 3D. It's gone from the flat page to 3D.
Yeah. And there's human beings and they're living it. Like they're living it. It's like it feels like they're living it. Like they're living what you thought of or what you came out of your brain.
Did they do anything that you weren't prepared for, like in your script, where you're like, "Oh, I never thought of it sounding that way or coming off that way"? Or
yeah, well, there was a couple of things where I thought, well, that's not really quite what I meant. But other things was like, oh, that wasn't what I meant, but that's a really cool way of doing it. Like,
yeah,
that's really cool. And it was organic because it flowed from what they were doing. So it made sense with what they were doing. There was an advert for there. So one of the conditions, I think, of the contest was that the director had to add in an advert for cigarettes or something similar to that, or alcohol, like some sort of alcoholic beverage. Yeah, it was an alcoholic beverage. And so they worked that into the scene where one of the characters was complaining about what the other character was doing. And then the other character described the bottle that he was drinking, and looked straight at the audience briefly and then continued the scene.
Great.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
That was a cool surprise. But
Since we touched on film already, we might as well migrate there. Where's your passion for filming coming from?
I think it's the dreamlike aspect of it. It's like creating a dream. Like you can just take images and they seem so real when you're watching. I grew up watching movies. Most people did. I loved to go to the movies. It was one of my favorite things to do. And it was always like going through an experience, like a dream, like, this new reality that you're being led into. And to be able to create that is really fascinating. I don't know how to describe it really. It's just really fascinating to me. I don't know if do you know who David Mamet is?
No.
He's a playwright. He was a famous playwright, but he also wrote this book called On Directing Film,
Hmm.
which is not very well known, but I read it once, and it was a fascinating paring down of the entire directing process to where 90% of it is making a shot list, just listing down what the shots you need and doing it in an artistic way so that the shots are connecting together to suggest ideas, and those ideas move the narrative forward. And that idea itself was very fascinating to me. So I always kind of wanted to do that myself. And then when technology became readily available and cheap enough to be able to just make our own movies now, I didn't want to pass up the chance. I also had gotten involved in the 48-hour film project after. Well, I did a couple of them before my strokes, but I did more of them after my stroke because I couldn't do as much theater. So I just started doing more movies. It was more viable for that physical state that I was in at that point. And a whole bunch of teams were doing them. A bunch of people I knew were doing them. So I got involved with a bunch of 48-hour film project teams and got to really learn how movies can be made, and the whole process from like the idea to like what you get to watch them with an audience at an actual movie theater,
Yeah, that's cool.
which is really cool. And so the whole process from the idea to like watching it in a movie theater, you just go through that whole thing in a very short amount of time.
Or do you have projects that you're sitting on that you want to do that you haven't
Oh
gotten
yeah, I
to yet?
always have projects that
Yeah.
I'm sitting on that I want to do. It's I need to be procrastinating something. So I should always have a list of projects that I need to do. Yeah, there's a movie I shot a couple of years ago that is ready for the music to be put in. I'm gonna do the 48 again in August. I have a couple of video editing projects that I've been wanting to do for myself. Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't really know what's going on with the 48, can you give us an
Sure.
overview of what happens there?
So the 48-hour film project, I think it started like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. Don't quote me on that. It's a contest which many cities in the world to do during certain weekends. Each city is assigned a weekend. And what it is you have 48 hours to write, shoot, and edit a short film, and then turn it in, and then it competes with all the other short films that are in the contest. And then at the end of maybe a couple weeks, the judges look at them. You have you have a community screening where you screen all the short films that entered the contest. You screen it at a movie theater, a real movie theater usually. And then after a couple weeks, the judges decide the best ones. And then there's another screening for all the best ones. You can just go and watch all the best ones.
It's pretty harrowing.
It's harrowing. It's sleepless. The more organized you are, the more sleep you'll get. Because like sometimes people will have certain people that are going to write the screenplay, certain people that are going to direct it, certain people that are going to edit it. You can assign different people different tasks.
And the clock is always ticking.
The clock is always ticking. It's very harrowing. But it's, you end up getting something done. And you get to see it. You get to see your work. And it may not be at the end of the 48 hours, it may not be the most polished version of it. But once you turn it in, you can always go home and re-edit it and then show the world the more edited version if you want.
The director's cut.
The director's cut, exactly. The rushed one is the one they screen at the movies. You can always make your own cut.
If you ever go out, and I'm sure you probably have, to that website for the 48-hour film, The films are amazing.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible the talent that this world has for just a short little film. What's the general time frame? Is it a 5 minute film or seven? What's the length?
Between 4 and 7 minutes long.
It's insane. I mean, really, yeah, I've seen stuff out there. I'm like, where did they get all the people? What,
I know.
crowd scenes, and I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do under pressure.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
it's
a lot of
fascinating.
creativity that comes in. In fact, sometimes I get more stuff done under pressure than I do if I have like a lengthy time to do it, and it's more creative. It ends up being more creative too.
Yeah. What are the parameters? So you get a
So you get so there's a kickoff event Friday night at 7 p.m. and out of a hat you get a choice of two genres that you pull out of a hat. So it could be like horror or comedy, or it could be like coming of age or western. You can choose which of the genres you want to do,
okay.
and you have all weekend to decide that. So
Oh, you do?
uh,
You can switch?
you can do whatever you want. You can be creative. You can do both if you want. You can combine the two if you want.
I
As
didn't
long as at least one of them is a genre in the film, you can do whatever you want. And then they also give you a line of dialogue that you have to use, a prop that you have to use, and a character who has a name, and they give you a name and occupation of a character. You got to use that. And it's very much similar to the 24-hour play festival. I don't know if you've ever
I don't think so. That would
seen
be
those,
even more
where
harrowing. I
it's
can't.
the same thing, but you have 24 hours to write, rehearse, and put on a play. That's what the Play in the Day festival was that Greg Parker was doing, that I was at the Hatbox. That's where I got the opportunity to write a play. I had 7 hours to do it, and it was in the wee hours of the night, but
Not a good time if you get writer's block.
yeah, well, the clock always helps you out with that.
What's your equipment?
I don't have my own. I do have my own video equipment, but I never use it because it's kind of old. But usually, whoever's the director of photography on my team will have their own equipment and their own lighting stuff and everything. But in terms of the angles and the shots, I try to get, if there's, hopefully there's time, I try to leave time to give at least two different angles of the same scene so that I can cut back and forth if I need to for, for rhythm purposes or whatever. Maybe something in the background, like someone walked in the background during a shot, but I really like the rest of the shot. I can cut to like the other angle or something, in editing. It helps with the pacing of the piece in general if you have two different angles that you can cut back and forth. So at least two. You did a movie with us a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, where you were like the grandfather who just kept falling asleep, and we were shooting at my mother's house, and Chris Demers was a father, and he was interviewing his son or his potential son-in-law that he thought, and it was getting dark out. The light was getting dark out, and I wanted to do that with two different angles, but I was worried about the time because it's a 48-hour film project.
Yeah.
So we just shot it with one angle. And then during editing, I was like, oh, I wish there was just like another angle that I could cut to. So yeah, at least two different angles of every scene.
What do you use, Adobe Premiere?
I use what do I use? I use Adobe. Yes, I do. No, I use Final Cut Pro. I'm transitioning to Adobe, but I've been using Final Cut Pro, which is just as good as far as I still can't tell the difference.
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably identical on some levels. One's a Mac, one's PC.
Yeah, I think there's some easier stuff in Adobe Premiere in terms of being able to drop shots in the middle of other shots. I think it's easier in Premiere to do that. Very technical, but for the most part, they're very similar.
You had brought up Kelsey,
Yeah.
and I know that you are now more active at Next Level Church, correct?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, can you talk? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Your involvement there and how you got involved, and
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think Kelsey invited me to an Easter service over there. I think it was in 2018, and I had been out of church for a while. I had some reservation. I think the main thing that was missing from church was sort of like the social aspect of knowing people from church in other aspects of my life, like So there's a whole bunch of people that go to Next Level that are also in theater, and then I do theater that I know outside of church. So it kind of brings it home, and it kind of like sort of, so that it's not like church and then this and then my life. So it's not like church and then my life, and it's two completely separate things. So I just started going there more often. And then Mike Domini said they needed some help in the sound booth, not the tech booth, because they do a lot of video stuff in slides and so he connected me with the girl who was running the tech booth, and I just went in one Saturday and I shadowed the guy who was just changing the pictures on the slides and on the monitors and using the software. He was showing me how to use the software for that, and I thought, okay, it's a great way that I can contribute to the church, which I love very dearly. I love that church. It's a great way to contribute to it, and it's something that I can do, and it's not much of a sacrifice. I just go for maybe like once a month, like one Sunday a month. I'll just go, not right now, and just help with the tech booth. It's very very doable for me, and it gets me to get to know all the other people that go to that church.
You have a strong Christian background?
I don't know about strong Christian background. I have a Catholic background. I used to go to St. Jean's in Manchester, but I wasn't. And I did all the sacraments. I don't know if I was personally into it. I was something that everyone else did, that I was expected to do, and I did enjoy a lot of. We had a really interesting priest, and his sermons would be always fascinating to me. So I enjoyed listening to him. But I was never like, I wouldn't say like 100% of a religious person. Next Level Church isn't really, I mean, it's religious, but it's not religious. It's
very contemporary.
It's extremely contemporary. And, obviously they pray, and it's all about Jesus over there, but it's not like, I don't know, there's something non-religious about it. It's just something that's not, they don't get stuck in their ways.
It's a social component that helps.
Yeah, it's a very big social component.
Very big. So I think one of the last things I wanted to talk a bit was, we have talked about it in the past, your improv stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so there may be people who didn't hear the QCI podcast that we had done. Talk about your improv and your love for that. And you guys are still over at the Stark, well, not now, obviously, Stark Brewery and all that.
Yeah, well, we will be having a Stark show. Well, okay, there's one scheduled for May 4th, which is the day, the day that everybody gets
the
back.
breakout day.
The breakout day.
It's going to be a lot of drunks that day.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully we will be able to do it that day, because we'll see how things go. But there is one scheduled for May 4th at Stark Brewery. So we're hoping we'll be able to do that. There's also, right now, there is an open session, which is where people can come for a couple hours to the YMCA and just play improv games. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, because I was changing screens for a bit. And
because I'm not that important right now. So go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at the dates. That's scheduled for April 17th. And I don't know if that's still going to happen.
April 17th?
Yeah.
So not May 4th. Okay.
I don't know if that's still going to happen. We'll see. But we'll always, the website is www.queencityimprov.com. Mm-hmm. And they're always updating the schedule. So it should be currently up to date. That's a couple hours you can just play improv games. But anyway, so again, at the Hatbox Theater, I was doing a show, and Toby Paul was directing it. My friend, Jackie Coffin.
Yeah.
We're really good friends, and we for a couple of years, we had just been talking about either joining or starting an improv troupe. Just because, for me anyway, it was something that I always kind of wanted to get back to doing, because when I was in college, I took an improv class. And it was like, again, it was like recess. It was like fun. It was like, you don't have to analyze a script. You don't have to memorize lines. You don't have to think about anything. You just go. whatever's in the tip of your tongue, you just do it and commit to it and then perform it. So that was fun. That was fun for me. It was like, but then for the next 20 years, I never followed up on that. I would always
20 years.
I would always think, oh, I should try to do some improv, because that was really fun. But I never did. I could always just be doing, normal shows. And so Jackie and I were talking for a bit about, oh, maybe we should just start an improv troupe or join an improv troupe. And there's a couple other people involved in the show and that wanted to do it, and it never really took off. But I was doing a show that Toby was directing, and Toby's been involved in improv for forever, like pretty much his whole life. And he had a friend, Phil Turbay, who Phil and a girl, Katie Hickman, were looking for people to start an improv troupe, because there's some improv troupes on the seacoast, but there wasn't really anything in this area, in the Manchester area. So they were looking for people. And I guess Toby had heard that Jackie and I were kind of looking for as well. So when Phil came to see the show, he just asked Jackie and I to join the forming troupe. And at that point, it was Phil, Katie, this other guy, Justin L'Italian, and then Toby ended up joining. So it was the six of us who, for a while, would have the open sessions and form a board and try to figure out, okay, how are we going to perform, and what are we going to do? What's it going to look like? So that's how it started. I feel more like I'm along for the ride than I am kind of a founder. I'm technically a founder, but I feel more like, I just lucked out and was able to come along for the ride, was invited to come along for this ride. This is so fun. We had a couple of auditions before we did our first show. And so we kind of built up the troupe a little bit. And then we started, and then we did our first show was a charity show at the YMCA, and it was a family show. And then Phil contacted Stark Brewing Company in Manchester, and I guess they didn't have anything for Monday nights, or they thought, something on a Monday night would help. So we had a mutual relationship with them, and we started doing every first Monday of the month and at Stark. And then Andrew at the Hatbox needed an improv troupe to replace the other improv troupe that was mid-season. So he asked, I think he thought of Queen City Improv. I'm not sure the details, whether he thought of Queen City Improv or one of us raised our hand. It could have been a little bit of both. And so we've been doing Hatbox shows ever since. And
are they popular? Do you have a good following?
I think so. I don't know what to gauge it against it, but it seems like it's growing exponentially. In fact, it's growing more than I thought it would.
Yeah.
When I first asked to join sort of the think group about the improv troupe, I had no idea. I didn't know a lot of people. Toby joined a few days after us, so I didn't know he was part of the troupe at that point. I had worked with Phil very briefly in a couple of shows, but we weren't constantly in contact. And I vaguely remembered Katie from doing some New Thalian Players stuff. So it was great to get into real contact with them and to get to know them. But I didn't know what was going to become of this thing. I didn't know how fast it would take off. And it took off really fast, which is great. And
so when you go to the Stark Brewery, are there people who come every week because they?
I think, yeah, we have our regulars. Yeah. We definitely have our regulars. So we have to change up our games a lot.
Yeah,
our games list, add some new ones, change the orders. It's because we're going to have, we'll go to the same place every month, and we'll have some regulars. So you don't want to just keep it stale or, keep it the same routine every time. So yeah, there's a few regulars. There's a few regulars at open sessions too. There's people who love to just come to open sessions and do the improv games there.
Really? That's all they do? That's all they care to do?
Well, no, I mean, some of them will audition, go to auditions. We usually only take one or two people for each audition. We usually have auditions twice a year. And it typically, because it always has to be someone that every single person in the troupe has to say yes to. It's got to be a unanimous decision. So sometimes, people audition and we'll think, well, they have a lot of potential. They could just work on maybe this or that or whatever, and then audition next time, and then, hopefully. And then we'll see them at open sessions a lot too. So we'll be able to work with them then too. So it's kind of a constant evolution.
Okay, so that's business. So let's talk about, what are you watching lately? Now that you're hunkered down, what hot show are you watching?
Besides porn?
Yes. Well,
okay.
That probably takes up a lot of your time, but and bandwidth.
Right. No, movies really. Yeah, we have some sort of. Meredith Hanson?
Do I?
She does a lot of Hatbox stuff. She's a stage man. She does a lot of stage managing in the Hatbox. She's also one of the 3 people that run the Hatbox.
Then I better say yes.
I'm sure you've seen her around.
Okay.
And then Jackie, we're kind of forming this simulcast group where we're both watching the same movie at the same time, and then just sort of chatting with each other. So yeah, I've been watching just a series of movies, random order. It's okay, so we just watched the movie with this character, with this actor. Let's see another movie with this actor.
So 7 Degrees of Separation or 6
exactly.
Degrees.
Yeah. In fact, I think 6 Degrees of Separation is going to be a movie we're watching soon. I'm joking not.
So I've been watching Ozark.
Oh yeah.
Holy crap! That's one of those kind of shows. Every episode is like.
Yeah, I have an attention deficit problem with watching series. I need a beginning, middle, and end. I'm like one of those people. I just need a beginning, and middle, and end. So like I can't just keep going on and on and on. It's really hard. I've started a few of them and I couldn't finish them. So like I kind of sworn off like series for a while. I just stick to movies and shows that are self-contained.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, because some of these, and especially if a show or a series starts to dip a little bit, and you wane interest on it, it's hard to get back into that kind of thing.
They always do, and a lot of them, they don't start off interesting. They get better as you go. But I have a problem getting past the boring beginning. I keep hearing, there's some shows like I keep hearing, it gets better. Just keep watching it. Keep watching it.
Yeah, it took me. I think I watched the first episode of Game of Thrones like 4 times before I ever. Yeah, I kind of got halfway in and thought, not for me. And then finally, it had such momentum behind it that I thought, okay, I got to sit through the whole thing, and then I was hooked. But 4 times.
Peer pressure really helps. If someone who's like constantly hounding me to watch something,
I love peer pressure. Yeah.
Cool. What about how are you doing with all this things going on?
We're bored out of our minds.
Right?
I mean, we are. We're trying to do stuff. I try to do a little bit of exercise in the house, but all we do is sit. I mean, you can't go outside. It's too cold or too rainy or too snowy, and so I mean, we're good. We're healthy, but just bored out of our minds. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. I've tied up enough of your time.
No, it's fun. I like talking as if people are interested in what I have to say. So that's pretty fun.
Was I watching? Like I paid attention?
Yeah, you looked like you were really interested. Yeah. But you're also an actor, so
there you go. Well, I was practicing my stare.
There you go.
My blank stare. It's my new character. All right, Darren, appreciate it, man.
Take care.
And if you enjoy listening to our podcast, please feel free to share them and click a like somewhere wherever you're listening to it. I don't have a clue where that would be. And if you want to find out more about Square Peg Productions, you can find us on Facebook or at www.squarepegnh.com. And for God's sakes, wash your hands and stay safe.